Hello and welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with amazing individuals from all around the world and look for ways to create a clean, green and sustainable future for us, the planet and all being. I'm your host, Tom Simak, an athlete and fellow plant eater who strives to optimize every living ecosystem. Passionate about looking after this beautiful floating rock we call home and all the lovely creatures that dwell among it. I'm really excited to share today's conversation, and it was one of those ones where we actually got to have it in person, which means that the quality for you guys is going to be way better, both in terms of the audio, but actually the conversation. We're going to chat with Dr. Andrew Little, MD. Andrew is an anaesthetist, tree-hugging, animal-loving herbivore. That's his words, not mine. I first spoke with Andrew well before this podcast was a thing in regards to his smoothie booster, Be Humane. But he was such a genuine, caring soul. On top of all that, he loves all things vegan related. So today we'll be touching on a broad array of topics, including the future of our planet, vegan kids, staying true to your ethics, building muscle, and of course, the biggest topic I've been stressing recently, antibiotic resistance. It is one of the biggest threats looming behind us, even with climate change there. It really needs to have the spotlight that it deserves, and the conversations need to go that way as well, because it is a really big threat to humanity as we know it. That took a really morbid turn before the episode started, but I know you'll enjoy this conversation between Andrew and I will see you on the other side. Andrew, mate, how are you going? Welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast.
Mate, fantastic to be here. Welcome to my house too.
It's actually really beautiful, and I'm loving these kids' toys around us and that xylophone thing. Do you have a favourite toy that you play with your ones?
Well, I don't typically have a favourite one, but the kids definitely have a favourite one. The bikes at the moment, and the Thomas the Tank Engine train set. That's a real hit too. So.
It's not the xylophone thing?
Well, actually, now that you say that, so when Tommy, our youngest one, is very upset, I do get that out and it'll instantly calm him down. So
that's so cool. And like, they're obviously quite a different age gap. Are you finding that they're learning at different rates, or have you learned things from
Harrison's first one, yeah, and Thomas' second one.
Have you made the mistakes now and then?
yeah, you do. You learn so much. I think you're far more relaxed with the second one. Definitely, I think any parent would agree on that. That being said, my wife Sarah really took to motherhood, and she read so many books before Harry even was born, our first one, and she was so prepared and she was so natural at it, and I learned from her every day. I can't say the same for me. I don't think that, and I mean this seriously, I wasn't as well prepared to be a father, and the hardest part probably was because of my exams and my career, but I learnt so much from her, and you learn heaps as you go along. There's no one book to fit everything, but you take what you like from each little book and you apply it, and it's been a great journey for sure.
I love that. Is it like, with nutrition, how there's like so many different gray areas, and one study says this and one that says that, and a lot of books have a lot of conflicting ideologies as well. Is parenting books the same, where you'll have one book say one thing, others say that is just poisonous to your kid's future? How do you navigate through that world?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to navigate. I talk about this all the time, Tom. I think navigating through this world, we have an incredibly complex world. How do you navigate through the data of nutrition, when you've got so many different things? How do you navigate through parenting? I think you really have to listen to your intuition at times as well. So there's things that we do as parents that just make sense to us. And now that doesn't sound very scientific, but there is a lot of data to back up a lot of things the way we parent. But there's also things where we go, you know what? That sits well with me and that makes sense. And I think that's where, you've got to apply a bit of logic every now and then too.
To just make it. That's what you learned from the first one. Use a bit more intuition.
Well, the first one, we read a lot of books. So Harry and Tommy are so different. They're so different. So Tommy is Sarah, my wife. He's the chilled, He's absolutely relaxed. He's been easy from day one. Harry is a junior version of me. There's so much going on in that little kid's brain, and that was me. I was so wired up. I had to really turn to meditation and things like that, and we meditate with Harry.
Awesome. How do you do that? How do you
so got little
apps
apps and things like that. So we sit down with him and meditate with him, and like obviously, tickle his back and talk about, I'm tickling your arm and things like that. And he'll say, hey, Dad will tickle you. And he's like, yeah, I just lay with him, and we do apps. And yeah, I know, I guess I can see a lot of myself in Harry, a lot of my own, I guess, thinking. And I used to overthink a lot of things. I used to really think a little bit too much. And yeah, once I married Sarah, I realized there was so many things. There was a couple of key things like the power of now, learning how to relax, to control my mind. And I learned so much with Harry, and we've just learned how to get him to relax. But it can be such a curse, but it is such an amazing thing, because that kid is he is super intelligent. Every parent thinks their kid is amazing, but this kid was reading at an incredibly young age. Like, I have a video of him at the age of 2.5, and he walked up to a bus stop and literally just said, didn't even know any of the words, and he said, hey, tosser, you know it's wrong. Like, it was an ad for tossing.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is hilarious. And he's phenomenal. But yeah, it's been interesting. They're very different, but it's been a really beautiful journey for both of them.
I mean, I don't have a lot of dad talk on the show at all, but because a lot of parents want, I'm hoping a lot of parents want the absolute best for their kid. They want their kids to be the brightest, the smartest, and give them a lot of opportunities that maybe they didn't have when they were growing up. And, you're thinking reading and 2.5 years old, that's young. Like, what do you attest that to?
Yeah, so you're 100% spot on. You always want what's best for your kids, and that's definitely been a commonality between me and my wife. We always do everything. It's the first time, I think, in my life where I've really been selfless and gone, it's more about those guys. My wife will disagree with this, but I attest a lot of it to her. She is just a beautiful mother. I've never been able to fault her. I've learnt so much from her. She's the most kind, compassionate, caring, patient, rational person that I've ever met in my life. And the way she raises our kids, I can't fault her, and I never would be able to. She's unbelievable. She sacrificed her whole career. I remember the days where she signed her papers to say she wasn't going back to work. She studied a lot. She studied econometrics. She did really good. She went to Harvard finance. She did economics at Harvard University, and she just said, I'm just going to throw it all away because I want to be a mum. And she really took to it like a duck takes to water. So reading a lot of books to him, and I think there is definitely opportunities you can provide your kids, but Harry is just he's got a very special mind, and he'll pick up on things very quickly. He understands patterns very quickly. He was counting to 10 at the age of about 14 months. We were in the lifts, and I remember this one guy saying, holy crap, how old is that kid? And I was like, oh, he's 14 months. He's like, and he'll count to 10. And I was like, yeah, he'll at the age of 2.5, he was skip counting, his skip count by 8s up to 120 or whatever. He's got a really special mind.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
And I mean, the juicy part of all of this is you're raising your kids vegan?
Yeah.
Or on a plant-based diet? Yeah.
And everyone tells you you're going to have a mentally impaired kid, right?
I know. Growth stunted, mentally impaired, all that stuff.
I've heard it all before. I mean, you see half my battles sometimes.
I do. They're amazing.
It's brutal. And I really monitored my kids quite heavily. I remember us quite vividly saying to Sarah, well, we're not going to raise our kids vegan. Like, we'll be vegan, but we won't raise our kids vegan. Like, and I was like, this is when I was just starting to go vegan, right? And I was like, I didn't know anything about it. And Sarah was like, well, you better work that out, because I want to raise our kids vegan, and you better work that out quick, smart, because if we're going to get married and do this, then we got to decide on this. And I said, that's fair enough. So I did a lot of research, and I was sort of compelled to do a lot of research because, like you said, everyone wants what's best for their kids. And so you have to really look into it. And I've never been more content to raise my kids on a plant-based diet. They're absolutely fine. They're thriving in every way possible. We've never had any issues with them. Well, there's always issues. Everyone's got issues with their kids, But I just see the headlines. All the data about stunted kids, and yes, I think if you look at the data, that vegan kids are more at risk of stunting if you're not doing it properly, and that's the hard part. You just need to put a little bit more effort into it and a little bit more thought into it. It's not as easy. And what I tend to always say is that a vegan diet, so vegan food is so whole food plant-based food. So vegan food in particular is either very high in nutrients and low in calories, which is perfect for an adult, or the junk food is very high in calories and low in nutrients, whereas animal products are high in nutrients, high in calories as well, right? So you always got all the B12, you've got everything, the DHA and everything you want. So it does get a little bit tricky, but when you're doing it the right way and you supplement, we just give our kids a supplement. I give them a multivitamin and I give them DHA. I sort of don't think that the research on DHA is incredibly concrete, but it's a risk benefit for me. I think at the end of the day, there's no harm in doing it and there's a potential benefit. So for my kids, it's fine. So as long as you're doing the right things and you're listening to health professionals, and we've got a lot of health professionals these days, we've got some beautiful data out there to show that kids are very, very healthy and do fine on a plant-based diet. My kids are great.
There's a few things I want to dive into there. And the first thing is, you're right. You obviously do want the best for your kids, and you obviously do spend a lot of time and do your due diligence to make sure the research is there. One thing that stuck out to me from what you're talking about is a multivitamin. And in my research, I think the data as a whole is quite multifaceted and is different. Of course, in the world of supplementation and multivitamins, there's going to be a lot of funding involved. On the other side, there's going to be a lot of non-biased science involved. So there's a lot you have to dive into. And in my research, there actually seems to be some sort of almost negative or not as an effective motive, I guess, with cyanocobalamin and the absorption when taking a multivitamin. Have you looked into, are you separately supplementing your kids with B12 and then a multivitamin? Have you looked into that?
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. So we used to give Harry a spray, and I probably would still do that if it wasn't. So the soy milk we use now is B12 fortified.
Yes.
So that's what we use. So he'll have soy milk when he goes to bed. He'll have soy milk on his cereal. Sometimes he loves a bit of cereal, or he'll just have soy milk, just drink it. And it's got B12, it's got vitamin D, it's got vitamin A in it, and lots of calcium. So that's why I'm always like, well, I'm actually happy for that. Our sort of regime has evolved as we've sort of gone through and discovered more things and just looked into things a little bit further. It's definitely evolved, but I'm very happy that by drinking a fortified B12 milk and having a multivitamin every day, he's getting everything he needs and more. And he's thriving, and Tommy's the same too. So.
Yeah, well, they're obviously quite young. I'm not sure, you might have a better opinion on me, that being a doctor yourself, but are you using things like blood tests or some sort of different measurements to make sure they are staying in full health?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't believe we need to. I just think, if, we're giving kids, meat and dairy and things like that, then they're going to get their B12 through that. We know that a lot of those animals, though, that they're getting, all those animal products are supplemented B12 themselves. So majority of them are. So they're still getting it through a supplement. But you're absolutely ensuring I can be almost more certain by giving him the diet I have that he's going to get that nutrition. I give young kids needles all the time, and it's not fun. It's not fun at all. So I wouldn't subject him to that. The only time I would subject him to that is if I thought he was failing to thrive or if something wasn't right. And I just don't see
There's
that.
no symptoms on the outside.
He doesn't stop. He's like, he's got all the energy in the world. If I'm worried about his iron or something, I would start to see things. We'd start to see stunting, or he'd be lethargic. He's so far from lethargic. We'd see these things, and I know that we're giving him B12 and all the soy milk that he does drink. That I'm very, very comfortable with that. Some people do. I know that I have seen some pediatricians who do that and have given their kids blood tests. I personally don't think it's necessary. I've seen the proofs in the pudding. I see it every day. I wouldn't recommend that to all these other kids. And so at the end of the day, if they're getting their B12 and they're getting their... So the big things we look at is B12, DHA. And like I said, obviously it's a bit sort of scattered, the research on that, but I think...
What do you mean with the scattered research?
Well, it's not. There's a lot of data. So there's a lot of Cochrane reviews on it. So what they did is they looked at a DHA fortified formula versus non-DHA fortified formula for kids who were just solely on formula. So one wasn't getting a source of DHA and the other one was getting a source of DHA, and they showed like an 8-year follow-up. There was absolutely no change in cognition and no change in brain development that we think about, right? So. But there's heaps. There's some studies to show a potential benefit. I think there are a few studies out there that can potentially offer a benefit. So there's a lot that don't. So I just say, well, it's a risk benefit. My job every day is to weigh up risk and benefit of getting a patient through theatre. And what's the benefits of surgery and what's the risk of the anaesthetic and what's the risk of surgery? It's the same with my kids. I go, okay, well, what's the potential benefits? Potential benefits. They got different needs to us, right? Like I said, we want a low-calorie, high-nutrient diet. They want a high-calorie, high-nutrient diet. So, their needs are different. And so at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I'm happy just to give him some DHA. Then that way, once they're 18 years old, I can go, I did everything I needed to do. You want what's best for them, what we were saying before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you think what is it, when I'm thinking about what animal products can do to us regardless of age, whether it's a toddler, baby, teenager, an adult, or whatever, I think in my mind, you've heard of Matthew Walker, his book Why We Sleep. Yeah. So he talks about how being awake is almost like some sort of neurological brain damage, and then at night it's kind of like repairing all the, it's solidifying your memory. Correct. So I'm thinking we can thrive. Like the human body is so good at adapting, and kids especially, they adapt to everything they learn. They're learning all these things. Do you think somehow we're doing some sort of physiological damage by feeding kids these, potentially harmful hormones and things like that their body is starting to adapt to? Like I've heard stories of young girls developing breasts earlier or period, like getting it early and things like that. Is that like myth? Have you looked into that side of things?
Yeah, so it's multifactorial, all those things. So like early age of menarche and things like that. Even just having a non-biological parent in the house, a non-biological father in the house can cause females to have a premature menarche. So
really?
Yeah, so there's so many different things. I guess the thing is I never look at a vegan diet like a silver bullet. Like I don't think we haven't a lot of data to show that eating a predominantly plant-based diet is very, 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 very healthy, and it's one of the healthiest diets. So there's data to show the Mediterranean diet's healthy. There's data to show that a plant-based diet is healthy. There's data to show that a predominantly plant-based diet is healthy. What we know, though, is that the Western diet and a very heavily animal protein diet is not that healthy. Okay? Yeah. People can survive on it. There's not a lot of data for it, all these carnivore advocates and things like that. They don't really have much evidence there to back up what they're saying, but then they accuse us of not having much evidence. But anyway, we can talk about that another time. But yeah, I don't see the vegan diet as this silver bullet, but I think in terms of health, I think it's a silver bullet for the environment and the animals. Definitely is. It's the best thing you can do for the environment and the animals, 100%. In terms of health, I think that I've got no doubt that the amount of dairy and the amount of meat we feed our kids with processed meats and stuff like that, I don't think that that's very healthy. I think if you looked at the data, the processed meats, particularly hams, bacon, those sorts of things, and a lot of dairy is, a heavily dairy diet. I don't think that's very good. If you look at the data from the Lancet, there's about 70% of the population is lactose intolerant when, we're not actually, they're allergic to it. And what's our treatment? If you look in the hospitals, when I did my peds term, it was, okay, this kid's allergic to cow's milk. And you see it all the time, and they go, okay, well, what's the treatment? We'll stop cow's milk and then gradually reintroduce it. So it's pretty clear to me that it certainly has a reaction in some people. I know I felt really way better when I got rid of dairy. I was drinking, and that being said, I was drinking 6 litres of cow's milk a week, and I was drinking, and I was eating it. Yeah, I'd go through, I'd literally,
you guys just saw his face, jaw drop.
Yeah, what the hell? So I'd go through 2-3 litre bottles of milk a week. I'd have cereal all the time. It'd just be cereal.
Yeah, right. That's the biggest.
So
one of the biggest
cereal,
culprits.
coffees. So I'd always be having a coffee or 2 coffees a day. So I bet you there's people out there that would go through more than 2-3 litres of milk a week with all the coffees they drink. They're going to have 4 or 5 coffees. They're just chowing down. They don't even think. And
they think the soft stools are from the coffee.
Yeah, but it's, I think that I don't think that giving your kids, in terms of just health, I don't think that giving your kids a little bit of dairy and a little and I wouldn't say processed meat. I would just avoid processed meat. 100%, I'd never ever recommend that to anyone. But a little bit of meat and a little bit of dairy, I can't say, hey, this is really detrimental to a kid. We don't have the data to say that. But we have a lot of data to say, hey, the more fruit and veggies you'll eat, the better it is for you. So that's where I sit on that.
I love that simplistic approach. It's a very David Katzy thing to say, where it's like Katz, yeah. you can never, like that whole thing he said about you have to get like 50,000 pregnant women, you have to follow their child from birth till 100 years old because you have to look at morbidity, rates of disease, you have to make sure you manufacture this diet perfectly. And, I'm definitely on the same page as you. We can never find a perfect diet. We can say the more plants, probably the better, less processed meats, probably the better. You can argue about the little, you can pull the hairs and the little fine lines there. I want to jump back to the parenting with vegan kids for a second because I want to take advantage of your knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
If, I can imagine now with this new generation, there's going to be a huge wave of vegan kids coming up. And because, this is a relatively new thing, we're not going to have a lot of pool of data compared to what we have elsewhere, especially with raising infants and toddlers. The little bit that we have, maybe it's not too much of an issue like you were saying before. But do you have any advice on the maybe day-to-days or what to feed your kids, what to look out for new vegan parents? The only thing I would add, which you might be able to, expand upon, is I'd probably say as a parent, you want to be pretty well versed in some science, because when you've adopt a plant-based diet, you're going to get heaps of questions.
Yeah.
But if you make someone else adopt a plant-based diet, you're almost sinister, doing this evil act. And so you have to be confident and congruent in what you know. So I'm imagining when you would have copped so much slack. And I think I've seen on Instagram people saying like, you're a horrible parent, you should go to jail, like this is a crime. Like this is stuff that every vegan
heavy,
parent,
right?
It's incredibly heavy. So I'm hoping that you could maybe relay to us some science or some sort of a logic that you follow when you're talking to these people, but also maybe some other tips and advice that you would maybe bestow upon them.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it's a really tricky world to navigate out there, and I get people coming to my page telling me I'm the evil doctor and, my kids, I should go to jail. I'm literally getting called Dr. Evil. I got called that the other day. But I definitely let that roll off my back. There was a time when I first started, I remember quite clearly someone saying to me, you have to be prepared for what's about to come.
Wise person, that one.
Yeah, because the criticism, people are it's the keyboard warriors, right? They're so strong and courageous behind their computer screen, and they're like, your kids, and I hear it all about how I've got sunken eyes. Someone came and said my ears are too big and sunken eyes, foggy brain, all these things, and I'm like, these people don't even post a photo of themselves, right? So it's like they're so fearful of vulnerability. And it's like the schoolyard bully, right? The schoolyard bully is so fearful of vulnerability. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to be different. So what do? They go on the attack. And that's the thing. So I think the best advice to parents is, first of all, just relax. Like, just relax. It is not what the media build it up to be, that vegan kids are going to be deprived and all that sort of stuff. there are some simple things. And what I would say to people is, I would say, if you are really genuinely worried about it, but you want, because like I said, I don't think it's a silver bullet for health, but I think a plant-based diet is a silver bullet for the environment and the animals. So if the animals and the environment are a big thing for you and you really want to do it for that, then just start by going 80 to 90%. Okay, and just then you don't even have to worry, right? But then you've already done such a huge thing, and you've really, and then you don't have to worry about it, because you can be like, well, my kids aren't even vegan, that's fine. They have a little bit of meat and dairy and things like that, and you're not worried. That's the important part, is to encourage people to give it a go. If you do want to go fully plant-based and you do want to go vegan, then there are a number of things that I would recommend, and obviously a B12 supplement is a big thing. So I would say B12 needs to be supplemented. You could use a spray if you wanted to, if you were worried that they weren't getting enough. I think that's the big one. Iodine is another one. There's iodine in our multivitamin for Harry. Tommy's breastfed. He gets everything. He gets everything he needs, mate. There's plenty of stuff in breast milk, so he's fine.
And then for the B12 to transfer, Sarah has to supplement.
Sarah has she has a supplement. Yeah. So she just has like a multivitamin she takes, a breastfeeding one, and she takes DHA as well. So that's all she takes. So she takes the same as Harry. And then, so we said B12, iodine, DHA. So DHA is separate. I'm actually going to did a video on this the other day, because a lot of people ask me this stuff. I will put it up on my page at some stage. But DHA is important. Iron, look, we don't supplement iron with the kids. I just have heaps of legumes, and my iron levels have never been so low. Like if I look back at my blood test, but yet I was the fittest I've ever been. Like I was running 10K in 36 and a half minutes. And I was really fit. I was the second fastest runner on this team of non-vegans, and I was incredibly fit. My iron was low, but my hemoglobin's fine. So we know that, if your iron's fine and if your hemoglobin's fine and your iron's in the lower range, it doesn't matter. We do know vegans have lower iron, but it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So we've got iron. Vitamin D is another one. So I think vitamin D and calcium is definitely important. I think from one of the most recent trials, papers that came out, that was just vilifying vegans. The paper didn't itself, but the media did. Yeah.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Pseudo-journalism, mate. Yeah. Just pseudo-journalism at its best. But, I think calcium and vitamin D is important too. So with Harry and Tommy, they will sit out in the yard and let them they'll have their shirt off, and go down the beach, they'll have their shirts off and things. But also there's vitamin D in the soy milk that they drink as well. So, and in their multivitamin as well. I
find it fascinating that vitamin D seems to be this holy grail that vegans can't get, but
it comes in our body.
I know, we make it. It's the one thing we don't ingest because we create it. And I haven't looked at a lot of other studies with kids, but I think people eating like meat wouldn't get do animal products contain vitamin D to your knowledge?
Not much. Goodness God, there's always things that I have to go and refresh. Milk used to be fortified with vitamin D and has pretty low vitamin D in it. Meat, God, I don't even know how much vitamin D is in meat, to be honest. There's lots of things I don't know, but
Wait, you don't know things?
Yeah, I do.
Dr. Andrew Little doesn't know things?
But I think the most important thing in life is admitting what you don't know. Yeah.
I love that. So on the topic of, Instagram and posting videos, are you still ghosted by Saladino? And is Baker also still ghosted?
The Carnivore, right?
The Carnivore guys.
So that was quite an interesting convo.
Did you even you chatted to them and then eventually they ghosted you?
He blocked me. Yeah, he blocked me. So Sean Baker hasn't. He just stopped replying to my emails. I just was sort of talking to him. I just said, "Hey, look," and you've seen the way I speak to these guys, right? I posted my full conversation with a guy from Australia. I can't remember his name. He was a gastroenterologist from Australia, and he was a full carnivore advocate. And I said, I posted everything that I write to these guys up on my page, just being like, hey, help me understand why you're advocating for a 100% carnivore diet. Like, what is it that, like I said to my wife when she was vegan, I wasn't. I said, what is it that you've seen that I haven't? I think that's a really nice way to say it. And I said to them, what have you guys seen that I haven't? What's making you advocate for a carnivore diet? And I was like, okay, can you just send me any of this data? And it just gets to this point where they just get so frustrated and they just essentially block me because I wasn't antagonistic at all. You can follow the whole conversation on my page. Good. I was like, hey, mate, yeah. And he's just, I just don't have time. That's it.
I did
and I'm like, what do you mean? You like, I'm one of your colleagues here. Like, you can't just say that in the hospital. You can't just be like, no. What I say is right, and I just don't have time to rebut what you say. So get out of my face, and I'll just block you. That's quite cowardly, I think. And Paul Saladino too, he did the same thing. He was like, I said, mate, can you send me some of the evidence you have for this regenerative agriculture? And this is like, regenerative agriculture is the biggest load of pseudoscience you'll ever meet. It is literally, they're so deeply entrenched in it that
they just love the ivory.
It's a fairy tale. That's got no science. It's pure pseudoscience. It's essentially a make-believe thing that they've come up with. And
how is it that it's gone so far as a pseudoscience? Like, wouldn't there be some sort of, essentially regenerative agriculture we're talking about, it's just they're against monocropping. Like, regenerative agriculture doesn't specifically mean purely cattle grazing. It means regenerative as a whole also includes fruits and vegetables and nuts, beans, legumes. Like, surely that's, like, as much as there's a lot of exaggerated science in there, I think there's some merit when it's saying we probably shouldn't monocrop the lands and fertilize it as much and crop it with the rows as much. Like, I think there's some merit, although I think they've pinned it like some, like you were saying at the beginning, like some vegans have, as like a silver bullet.
Yeah, they think it's a silver bullet to climate change. And you're right. Like all those monocrops and stuff like this, this is why it's such a strawman argument. The monocrops, they think we're like, oh, well, you can't have all these monocrops. It's like, we're not saying that. We're against them too. Majority of them feed cattle, these monocrops. And the thing is, our food system is pretty crazy. Like, we sort of really are destroying the world with it. And I think there is a big debate about organic versus GMO versus organic and things like that, pesticide use and all that sort of stuff. And that's a whole topic on its own for sure. But you're right. I think that we need to reduce there's a lot of science to show what's detrimental to the planet, and these big monocrops are quite detrimental. It's completely artificial. That being said, it has fed the world, because there's so many of us. But we are at a point now where we're incredibly smart and we're incredibly intelligent and knowledgeable. We can do something about it. And there is some beautiful farming techniques that are coming out now. The thing is, at the end of the day, the regenerative agriculture, you apply it to meat, they're showing that it's better for the soil, and it's better because in terms of antibiotics and things like that, it's better for the planet than factory farming. That's the comparison they're drawing. It's not better than plants, and this is what they have all this evidence. I've been on the Savory's website, Alan Savory's website, who quoted something I saw it the other day. It's like, you can't rely on science to prove everything or something. He said something about how science never proves anything, and I was like, because he was getting so criticized because there was no data to support his methods. And so then he starts saying, well, science can't prove anything. It doesn't have all the answers. And it's like, okay, well, if you're going to say this, make up this magical regenerative agriculture thing, then you need to have good data to back it up. But I can't even remember where I was going with that now. I
think Savory got really salty when he came out with this. I forgot what his actual original agenda or hypothesis was, and then I think it was a group of like 4 scientists that came out and they're like, all right, cool, if you have this solution, let's try and replicate it, because that's what scientific methods do. And they tried to replicate it and they're like, sorry bro, it just doesn't work. Like, where are you getting your farms from? Where are you and nothing could be replicated. I think it was about the grasslands. I think he made a claim that grasslands sequester more than rainforests. I think that was one of his claims.
Which is completely false. I've got all that data and all those up on my page. So I've my highlight section I filled with all the data on that in terms of grasslands. I've got folders on my phone. So one guy I really like to follow is Nicholas Carter.
Love Nick Carter.
Yeah, I think he's one of the most...
Shout out to Nick.
If you are listening, Nick. I think he's one of the most important people in the world to listen to.
Yeah.
An environmental scientist, as someone who knows it, he knows it better than anyone. And I wouldn't even try and pretend that I know it half as well as he does. And it's just, I always write to him, hey, mate, what are your thoughts on this? And it's really great to have that. That's what I love Instagram for, is to have that collaboration with these people. But we should be listening to scientists in their field and these guys. And this is what I remember when I lost my train of thought. Like I went onto the Savory website and you look at all these articles, and half of them are just like, some of them are interviews or questionnaires about farmers answering a questionnaire. That's not science, This is
anecdotal at best.
It's
N equals 1.
It's so. This is the thing in science. In science, we test our ideas against reality, and so we take a hypothesis, and what we do is we start with the null hypothesis. We say that there is no benefit. There is this way is no good, and we try and prove that wrong. We do it under all this scientific scrutiny. The scientific method is one of the most sound ways and unbiased ways to scrutinize our ideas, right? But what they do in pseudoscience, they essentially, just to finish that, we then scrutinize everything. We come to our conclusions, right? So we start with our hypothesis, then we come to a conclusion. These guys just start with a conclusion, and then try and find all this stuff to
work their way backwards.
Work their way backwards. Oh yeah, well, this is the best method. That's what pseudoscience is, and it's just wrong. And this is when Paul Saladino blocked me, because I was like, mate, I sent him all these papers, and he sent me one article. I can't remember who did it. God, it's been so long now. Is that life cycle analysis from was it Whitehaven Farms or whatever? What's that cattle farm? Oh, I can't. White Oaks Pastures.
Pastures, yeah. Right. I think I've seen Savory quoted.
Yeah, and it was and he said it's a detailed life cycle analysis. I was like, mate, he sent me this set of PowerPoint slides. It was like this terrible study that was funded by some company that it was obviously, and anyone can say that it was funded by a company and they had bias, but it was so ridiculous. I ended up doing the calculations on it. And if you followed Paul Saladino's diet, I looked at how much meat he consumes. I went to his standard diet. And if you've worked out every single person, and we're going towards 10 billion people in 2100, I just did some simple math calculations. I said, righto, if everyone ate that diet, let's have a look at how much land this White Oaks Pastures has and how much meat comes from it. So we had to look at the weight that would come from the carcass and things like that. And a lot of people, they advocate nose to tail or something, so they eat the tongue and they eat everything. So the percentage of weight, the percentage of food that you can get from that carcass actually comes down, because a lot of it's bone and things like that. But if you actually added it up and you went through Paul Saladino's diet, you needed like 9 more Australias or 8 more Australias full of cattle farms just to support the whole world. And that wasn't even that. And I eliminated kids. I said, all right, anyone under the age 18, we're not feeding them. I did a full video on it, and I just said, and that's when he just was like, nah, blocked. And you literally, none of it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense.
I want to touch on something real quick, but isn't Saladino like eating veggies and stuff now?
I don't know. Is he?
I thought I saw something that he started to eat a few veggies, but that's got to be one of the most frustrating things in probably today's world. I've got to say this: the pandemic of misinformation, but not only misinformation. If you're like, I don't have some sort of Bachelor of Science. Like when I'm doing my carousels on Instagram, for me to make that accurate, I have to do hours of research for this one carousel, because I'm like, I got to be unbiased. Do I have to look at all the scientists when they say no conflict of interest? Do I actually have to look at who this scientist is funded by? Like, it's so hard to really, like, one study takes so long to dive into, and there's something like 8,000 papers published a day. Like, and how do you organize the studies you look through? How do you stay on top of it? You've got folders on your phone. What do you look for in a study that says, this is BS, I'm not going to look more into this, I'm not going to waste my time?
I think that is an amazing question. I think about this a lot. And honestly, I think the world, so navigating the world now and data it is a full-time job in itself, and no one can ever know anything. Like there is, like you said, there is papers after papers, and there's tiny nuance in each thing. This is where you need an element of trust too, I think, as well, because just like when someone comes to see me and wants an anaesthetic, they would trust that I know what I'm doing and that I could keep them alive from an anaesthetic, and I could get them through that. Just like when you build a house, you have a plumber that does the plumbing. You have an electrician that does the electrical wiring in the house, things like that. You need to trust professionals in their field. And the way science works is a single study quite often by itself doesn't really mean a lot. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you have some really, really good studies, some really big trials that mean a lot. There's a lot of people in them, and they have quite statistically significant differences. However, what we find is that what we want in scientific research is we want multiple papers from multiple sources. We want multiple authors from multiple places in the world, multiple centres, producing the same consistent and reproducible results. And that will essentially form what we call a scientific consensus, where we have a consensus of scientists who sit down and analyse the data and go, you know what, here's all the evidence we have. Our full-time job is to look at this, understand their own biases, because we are riddled with our own biases. Confirmation bias being the mother of all biases.
Absolutely.
And these scientists sitting down together and saying, okay, let's have a look at the data. These are our conclusions. And we're getting that now. The Lancet, the Eat Lancet did that.
Yeah.
There's the World Health Organization, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, all these major, the United Nations, all these major scientific organizations are starting to really get behind it. And it's starting to move forward, but you're always going to have people who dig their heels in. And the interesting thing is, we're so compelled by our own biases that the data shows, psychological data shows that if you challenge people's beliefs and you show them information contrary to what they believe, they dig their heels in even further, and it solidifies what they believe even more. And you'll always get these people. You can show anyone a picture of the world a picture of the world that's round. There'll be people who say, nah, it's flat. That's bullshit. Yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the S word on this podcast, mate. But
I'll tick the explicit bomb. Yeah.
But that's the reality of the world we live in. So, like I said, we want scientific consensus, and it's quite clear that we need to transition to a predominantly plant-based diet. Okay, and most people will say that because most people don't want to stop eating meat and dairy. If you want the best diet for your health, then I think the research overwhelmingly points to the fact that you should eat an 80 to 90% plant-based diet. If you want the best diet for the planet and the animals, you should eat a 100% plant-based diet.
I'm 100% on the same page as you. I think the science is pretty clear. When I first heard the term predominantly plant-based, I'm like, these guys are scared of saying the word vegan or what? But I see where it's coming from. And I know I think what's a really interesting excuse that I think we need to remove right now, like beyond the protein, and that is, veganism is expensive, because when we're looking at developing nations of the world, they're already predominantly plant-based, not by choice. It's the cheapest foods. But I want to play devil's advocate. And, when we have people like Baker, Rogan, Saladin, all these jerks, I don't want to be mean, but these people that I can't get on their level. Not for the lack of trying.
Yeah.
Because like you, it's like, what are you seeing that I'm not? And for me to believe that humans are inherently good, like, what are you smoking that's telling you to read the paper this way? Like, do you have a hypothesis on what it is that these people are thinking? Like, why? How can they? Like, surely are they hiding themselves from the science that is? We've got predominant figures in the plant-based space that are making a lot of noise. Greger, Clapper, Bushowitz, list goes for ages. Are they blinding themselves from these scientists and prominent figures because they, I'm sure at some level, would have a confirmation bias because they're also human? Or are they collecting a paycheck? Like, why is it that they're not seeing what we're seeing, in your opinion?
It's a really hard question to answer.
I'm assuming you don't know them, but let's just.
It is. So our brains are just inherently flawed, and we just have all these biases and heuristics that just flaw our brain. And we know what biases are. Heuristics are mental shortcuts that we continually take, and we just come to this conclusion. It's It's a way of reducing the calculation in your brain. It's a path of least resistance. I've got this conclusion and I'm happy with that. I'm going to stick with that. We're so compelled by our biases and what we want to believe that we literally fail to see the truth. And even in the face of scientific consensus or, scientific data that completely refutes what someone thinks, they will just dig their heels in and it will solidify their beliefs even more. What happens when you challenge someone's beliefs and you challenge their morals or something that they're so deeply ingrained? You think of religion. If I went up to someone and said, well, God's not true, it releases a flood of noradrenaline, adrenaline into the amygdala, and you get this fight or flight response, this sympathetic response where people they're just thinking with emotion. They're not thinking with the neocortex, the most developed part of our brain that makes us human. They're thinking with the amygdala and the emotion and things like that. And that is very blinding. It clouds so many people's judgments. And I just think that these people are so clouded that I don't think they'll ever come out of it. They'll never see it. The classic example is when the Carnivore MD went on that show, The Doctors, and they said, okay, let's give you a chance. What you saying that plants are bad and they've got all these anti-nutrients and they're out to kill us, which is so ridiculous. Wow, I can't even believe I just said that. But he said, why don't you show us what evidence you have to support a full carnivore diet? Have you got any evidence? And he said, yeah, I do. There's this study and it's got 2 people in it. And I was just like, stop right there. Like, you've got a study with N equals 2 and they were on a carnivore diet for a year or something and they felt better. And it really blew me away. Like, the logical inconsistency there of just not even understanding, but then they'll sit there and tell us that we've got these epidemiology studies that have hundreds of thousands of people in them, and they're like, no, I'm just not going to accept that.
You know what it is? Can you run me through what exactly is an
epidemiology study?
Yeah. Told you I'm not good with these big words, but I try. Because I have heard, I think it was the Carnivore MD or some of them saying these studies are not valid. Yeah. Like they're not reflective of reality. Like, what are they and why would they think at all that it's not reflective of reality or real life situations?
So a lot of the stuff that we have is like cohort studies, right? So if you look at the evidence hierarchy, everyone always wants a randomized control trial.
Double-blind placebo.
Oh, it's got to be everything. And because that's the hierarchy is designed to reduce bias. So as you descend down that hierarchy, bias starts to increase. And with a RCT, which is what we love in medicine too, we want to see what the specific effects of a single drug are, and we control everything else. And that's pretty clear then, right? That's it. But then we take these cohort studies and we look at 50,000 people. We can follow them prospectively or retrospectively. So we can look at them and say, okay, well, let's have a look back in time and see what they were eating and what they were doing. Or we can say, all right, we're going to follow them from now and we'll just continue to follow them. Following them from a prospective is typically obviously thought of as a higher level of evidence, right? But there's so many confounders in that. There's a lot of confounders in it, and it is hard, right? So this is this whole thing of correlation doesn't imply causation. It doesn't mean causation.
Yeah.
And this is what they'll say, but they can over apply that rule, and to the point where correlation does imply causation, right? So, and we've seen that with the tobacco industry. But these people, they over apply that rule and go, nah, I'm just not going to accept any of that data. So here's my goalposts. I'm just going to shift them right back here so you can't even kick that goal, right? And it's a classic phenomenon called shifting the goalpost. They'll just literally move the goalpost to a point where you cannot even kick a goal. And so if you go back and you look at the epidemiological data for smoking, the tobacco industry actually said, so we can either say that A correlates with B, so A causes B, or B causes A, or we could think that potentially there's some other thing, C, that can cause A and B. They'll always choose that it's C causing A or B.
Of course.
If you look at the tobacco industry, what they did was they essentially said, and they had this campaign going to say that it's not that smoking causes cancer, it's that cancer causes smoking because you're stressed and anxious and you want to smoke to relieve anxiety. That was one of their big campaigns. It's insane. Look, you look at all the data on it. That's how they did it. So it's a classic way of just, I guess, misrepresenting the truth. And unfortunately, as I said before, like one epidemiology study doesn't really mean much on its own merits. But when we have just consistent, reproducible studies that start to show an effect, and then we can look at a dose response curve, right? So then we start to say, okay, well, if we've got this little trend here, let's look at dose response. So let's say we'll substitute people who, let's just say smokers, we can have a look at if they're smoking 20 versus 40 cigarettes, and we can say, oh, look, there's a difference there. So then the trends, it all starts to support the evidence, right? And we start to see more trends. We're doing that with meat and our diet now. We're starting to say, okay, well, if you exchange a certain percentage of your diet with whole food plant-based, it reduces your risk of cancer, reduces your risk of diabetes, reduces risk of this. So now we're starting to see this evidence. It all adds up and it all means something, but they'll just write it off as nothing.
There's a lot to dive into there. And the first thing that comes to my mind is I'm sure we can find plenty of N=2 studies to send to them if that's really what they're going to come to the call with. Let's be honest. And look, there's a YouTube video I'm thinking of, and this is probably the same kind of level of scrutiny that they went through. And it's pretty much just two big popular YouTubers. I've forgotten their name. This one was very pro carnivore. One was a vegan. Yeah. And this vegan said, you know what? Let's collaborate. I will go on a full carnivore diet. So he's like, I'm going to ditch the ethics. I'm going to just do it. We're going to get a third-party doctor. This wasn't anything scientific, but they used a third-party doctor and medical center to analyze all their blood samples. I think they did it, I can't remember if it was 1 week or 1 month, and they switched and they looked at all the biomarkers. All of them approved. The vegans obviously like, I'm going back to vegan. This is bullcrap. The carnivore guy got his results and he said, yeah, I see that. I don't think saturated fat LDL is too bad, but I'm going to go back to my carnivore diet. Because, and then when they looked at like, why didn't his results improve so much? They looked at his diet. So what were you having for breakfast? Peanut butter and jam sandwiches. What were you having for lunch? Cereal. Yeah. What are you having for dinner? Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like, what do you mean? Maybe an apple? Like, because it wasn't shown. I think when it comes to that stuff, it wasn't like what's vegan and what's whole foods plant-based, which is obviously what's going to get the results. But I think where I'm going with this long-winded point is the thing about confirmation bias is they're always going to find something else. Like when I was talking to Nagra the other month, when I chatted to him, he's like, you know, you can show them that LDL increases, and then they'll find a reason and a study to say LDL isn't even that bad. LDL1, that's great. You're in perfect health. And I think that's the real danger. Like, I wonder if we can ever make those people happy. Like,
yeah, no, you can't, and that's the shifting the goalpost mentality, right? So they're essentially saying, well, you know, here's where my targets are if you want to, you know, convince me. And then you get there and they go, well, no, back here now, you know, oh, they move over here. And it's just impossible. It's irrational. And unfortunately, there's a really good documentary. It's a book called Predictably Irrational. I forget the guy's name. He's like Russian or something, but talks about how predictable but how irrational humans are. And it's really quite fascinating to watch when you put humans into a situation. It's very predictable what they do, and it's very irrational what they do. So yeah, I think that's the way it is. That's the way the world works. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said at the beginning, it's a wild, convoluted, messy, sometimes irrational, sometimes rational world. And I'll shift gears here for a second because we're talking about health for a while. And obviously another two pillars that you're extremely passionate and that we love talking about is the environment and the animals. And one thing that really springs to my mind when I'm thinking these two pillars, and I guess it kind of relates to health as well, but also the treatment of animals. I saw you post, I think the other month, about antibiotic resistance. What does antibiotic resistance mean? Like, why is it that we're giving animals this compound, I guess, and what dangers are we facing because of it, or if any at all?
Yeah, we're facing huge dangers. We're on the edge of an abyss in the microbiological world, where we are just have no idea where we're headed for, I believe. And it's one of the, so if you look at the United Nations top 10 threats to humanity, I did a post on this a little while ago. 7 out of the top 10, so 6 are directly caused by animal agriculture, and most likely.
Do you know what they are?
So greenhouse gas emissions. So
yeah,
greenhouse gas emissions aren't animal agriculture doesn't produce the most emissions, but you've also got to consider opportunity costs of the deforestation that we're talking about. Also got to consider what effect we're having on climate. So it's climate change is the big one. Sorry, what I should say. So climate change is the umbrella term. Greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, ocean dead zones. So that's really important, and waste production. So toxic waste production. Antibiotic resistance is another one. And then there's pandemics. So the flu pandemic, and they've also got a separate one for other pandemics, I believe. I can't remember what's one of them was. This one was a little bit. I thought was a little bit far-fetched. It was a bit hard to claim, but it was HIV, but that came from eating chimpanzees, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
That's what we think. So it's another form of animal agriculture.
Well, they kind of say that was because the animal agriculture or the sea agriculture of them fishing, made them go inland and eat these bushmeats and stuff.
And so we know we're doing the exact same thing on a different scale. It's not HIV. It's all sorts of pandemics. The flu virus is going to be the biggest killer. It's insane. It's mutating faster. It's mutating rapidly. And this is what we're seeing with the current pandemic right now. They're smart. They've been here longer than us, these microbes. They know what they're doing. They're evolving. They'll find ways to live just like we want to live. And one of the last ones was impoverished countries, so impoverished areas where, so places stricken by drought and famine. And so number one, consumption of water, and we could feed the world, right, with the grain we feed to cattle. I'm not saying go and make all these GMO crops, but the land for these GMO crops, we could make some good fruit and veggie crops, right?
Yeah.
So, that's why I personally believe that animal agriculture and particularly factory farming is the biggest threat to humanity. And I've got a good reason to believe that. I work in intensive care and we give antibiotics all the time. We have infectious disease teams who circulate the hospital, microbiologists who will call me and say, hey, I've got this result, I've tested this is this bacteria that's growing in this person's blood. We think it's resistant to this, we think it's sensitive to that, you should start this antibiotic. We have people who regulate antibiotics. They come and they do rounds through ICU, and they're incredibly smart people, and I've got ultimate respect for these guys. They know their stuff so well, and we essentially regulate antibiotics when 70%, I think it used to be about 80%. Now it's decreased a little bit. Europe has significantly decreased the amount of antibiotics, but the rest of the world, Australia and America haven't. So much of our antibiotics, and don't worry about the percentage. Even the mass of antibiotics is increasing, so it's just continues.
When you're
to
saying
go up.
mass, do you mean
massive,
like different strands?
Kilograms of antibiotics we're feeding these cattle are just going up and up every year.
Right.
And
is that because the cattle?
Because we've got more and more cattle.
Right.
So so it is starting to, in some areas like the EU, it's starting to decrease. So that's why the percentage is coming down. But still, we're still increasing the amount we're still promoting antibiotic resistance. And like anything, a bacteria just wants to live. So it will evolve. And just like when all humans are born, we'll come up with different genetic variations that some are favourable, some aren't. There's a really good documentary. It's a small video. I used to have it on my page, and I'll try and get it up there. I think it's still there under antibiotics, but I'm pretty sure it is still there. But it's at Harvard Medical School, and it shows the spread of bacteria as you increase. So they have an agar dishes, and they're all lined out. And they start with 2 like bacteria, and it just replicates. And you see the bacteria replicate, and it gets to the next agar dish, which is 10 times the antibiotic concentration as the previous one. And then it's 100 times the next one, and then it's 1,000 times the next one. And you just see it just mutates, and all of a sudden you get a mutant bacteria, and that'll be resistant to that antibiotic. I see it in intensive care all the time. We're treating people with antibiotics, and all of a sudden it just becomes so resistant that bacteria just it becomes a commensal organism. It stays on that human forever, and they'll sit in their respiratory tract or the urinary tract and things like that, on their skin, MRSA. So methicillin resistant Staph aureus. So all these bacteria that are just constantly exposed to these antibiotics are just mutating, and we haven't produced many new bacteria of new antibiotics for a very long time. And it's one of the biggest threats that we'll ever face. There are people in this world, there's a really good documentary called Resistance online. There are people who have lost limbs and things because bacteria is so rampant that none of our antibiotics treat them. We are using some of our last line antibiotics at the moment in ICU. Meropenem is a really strong, powerful antibiotic, and we spare it for very serious cases, and it's just getting used increasingly more. I'm not an expert in antibiotics, and the microbe world is incredibly complex. But I do know that we are literally just playing with fire, and that's obvious. We are absolutely playing with fire. Anyone, and I even know some of the infectious disease guys who said to me that the number one cause of antibiotic resistance is animal agriculture, and we know that. So yeah, we're facing some pretty bad things in the future, I believe.
Now I'm just thinking what the consequences are on a more relatable scale. When you're saying you amputated arm, is this like we're talking like a cut on like a steel thing or rusted thing? It gets a little bit infected, but the infection's like what kind of severity of injury do you have to incur for the result to be, we can't treat this bacteria that's growing in you now, we're just going to have to cut something off? Yeah. Like what kind of situation? Like I'm assuming based on context, it's something that's pretty regular, but now we can treat it so well it's almost every day. But we're kind of saying, or in your context, in the near future, it's going to result in a lot of hopping around and one-armed people.
Yeah. At the end of the day, so what we're seeing is you'll see, and I saw it in Mackay, a fisherman who goes out, treads on an oyster or something, gets an infection, and that infection just traverses all the way up the leg to the point where we just have to cut the entire skin off. And we have to stop the back. You see this leg that's just all the muscle. It's quite horrific. We're seeing, I watched the resistance. They talk about it where they've got people who the bacteria is spreading all the way up their arm. The only way to stop it is to cut the arm. So the body will try and segregate it. So if you get TB or something, it will try and tuberculosis, it'll try and close it off and keep it in the lung. So our body's pretty good at that, as our immune system doing that, is trying to stop the spread of disease. And the disease just wants to keep spreading, obviously. They just want to keep replicating. So the only way to stop it sometimes is to, like with an abscess, we cut it out, or with some of these people were getting their limbs amputated because they had a resistant bacteria that none of our antibiotics could treat it. I see people die from sepsis regularly. So yeah, I don't know. Are the antibiotic companies going to come out with new antibiotics? There is some hope of some certain things, but it's just obvious what the answer is, right? Like we could just preserve the antibiotics we've got at the moment, and we wouldn't have to worry about producing too many more new ones. But we always need to stay one step ahead of the bugs because they're cunning little buggers, literally.
Yeah, that's incredibly frightening. I guess I've never thought about the insane consequence of that. Like we've got really this Western world where people are increasingly getting comfortable. We've got, people living at poverty line with mobile devices more powerful than what NASA could send a rocket to the moon, you know what I mean? But we've got this looming threat that we can't see. A lot of us don't understand, and a lot of people are seeing it in some weird future in which they've kind of instilled every single center, a little grain of hope on science will evolve and we'll find a solution. But at the end of the day, scientifically, we have to say that there is a chance, however small or big, that we won't find a solution in this. And the solution could just be, stop this incredible antibiotic use in giving it to the animals. Yeah. And when I'm looking at that, obviously, when we're simplifying it, and the way that I'm understanding it, as rudimentary as it is we give the antibiotics to the cattle so they don't develop their diseases. Yeah. And then because we're giving it to the cattle, these diseases are learning, they're adapting, they're mutating. Then that arrives into our system, and we use similar strands of antibiotics for ourselves so that we don't get these certain diseases. I'm guessing I'm in some form of track, right, or maybe a little bit off. But if we then stray away from the path of eating animals and we stick to plants, whether that's from childhood or even into adulthood, have we ridden our chance of being resistant to these antibiotics?
well, you significantly decrease your risk. They'll always, like, we use 20% of the antibiotics in the medical field, so there'll always be resistance there. But oh my God, it'd be a drastic reduction. So we vaccinate these animals. You look at them; they're just in a cage right beside each other, right? It's a test tube. It's a perfect test tube for a disease, and they're just literally these viruses, these bacteria are replicating constantly. So yeah, it is to stop the actual animal getting sick, but it's also a growth promoter as well. So they don't know why it promotes growth. The theory is that the antibiotics will eradicate some of the bacteria, some of the microbiome of the cow, and therefore reduce the competition for food and things. So the cow puts on more weight and things like that. So yeah, it was something that they noted. I think it was tetracyclines that they use quite regularly, that they noted that the chickens were starting to grow, and it's so wrong, and it's so unregulated, and it's just, people sit there so many times and be like, GPs shouldn't be prescribing antibiotics for colds. I was like, that's the least of your worries. That is the least of your worries. Yeah. You look at how the bird flu at the moment, it is going rampant. Like, all just travels around the world, because all it takes is one worker to just get an infection the next minute. Yeah, we'll face the next pandemic at some stage. It repeats itself. History repeats itself. We've been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah,
until we wipe ourselves off the planet.
There's been so many different strands of COVID, and there's so many strands of every disease. And I know there was talks of like already the next one hit in a abattoir in China or something, and it had like a 50% it had like a fatality rate of like 40% or something stupid. And I know, was it SARS from camels or something in Egypt?
MERS was it? I think from camels. Oh God, mate! It
had much higher fatality rate than what we're looking at now. Regardless of where you stand, I know a lot of people have differing opinions on this topic, but there's such a big world out there, and I think this kind of makes this a whole different stance to the three pillars of health, environment, and ethics, because when we're talking about health, it's always nutrition. When we're talking about environment, it's always climate change and land use. And when we're talking about ethics, it's always the physical slaughter of the animal. But we've got this fourth huge looming shadow that maybe needs to get talked about a bit more.
Massive threat, huge threat. And I just think I don't think people understand it. I know there's probably people I go, it's a leading cause of antibiotic resistance, and people probably just go, oh yeah. But when you see, you see, so we'll get this printout at work, and someone will grow a bacteria, right? And that they're cunning things. So they'll get in through your urethra. They can get in, so the bacteria can get in through anything, through your skin. It can get into your heart, all sorts of things. It can just spread everywhere. And then what we do is, once we can try and isolate it, so we can take a blood sample, we can grow that bacteria, we grow it in a lab, and then it comes up in a petri dish, and then we add little antibiotics onto it, and we type them on. We can go, and I get this little printout, and it says, it's resistant to this, resistant to that, resistant to that, resistant to that, sensitive to that. And and
the sensitive mean
it will be treated. The bacteria, the antibiotic can treat it.
Yeah.
And there's times where it's just, we have bacteria that are resistant to all our antibiotics, but a lot of the time they're resistant to almost everything except just our sort of last line, which is scary. It's a pretty scary world, that's for sure.
What's so special about this last line?
The last line of antibiotics?
Yeah.
Well, it's I guess, like I said, I'm not a microbiologist or anything, but some of the big ones we use, Piptaz, piperacillin and tazobactam, and then we use that like it's hotcakes now, and it's a very, very powerful antibiotic. But then meropenem is another one, which they're all different classes of antibiotics, and I would only even just scratch the surface, but it's typically thought that meropenem is a very, very strong one. You see people on it, you're like, goodness gracious. We're sort of using our last line here. I mean, there's not so we don't have much further to go, so we are in trouble. Whether the drug companies come up with stuff, then so be it. But it's just a band-aid on a really huge
and growing
pathological
wound.
Process. It just needs to change. There is no two ways about it. and I even think the carnivore advocates would agree with this, factory farms have got to go. They just have to go. Even the carnivores.
Is that the one thing we can agree on?
Oh, I think carnivores, if I sat down in the room with Paul Saladino, I bet you we'd both agree on that, and we'd say, hey, factory farms have to go. And I reckon he'd probably say, yeah, that's true. I'd like to think I wouldn't be surprised if he said no, but anyway.
Well, they always talk about, I guess, the opportunity of pasture raised or grass raised. But, what's fascinating is the kind of give and take relationship between that and, you could argue that abattoirs and these kind of situations that the animals are in, regardless of ethics, is maybe slightly better for the environment anyway.
Yeah.
But you touched on something interesting before, maybe like 20, 30 minutes ago, but I stuck onto it in my mind somewhere in there. And you touched on GMOs, and they're an interesting little critter because there's lots of different ways you can look into it. And I know there's another area of nutrition that's incredibly grey. Like there's just, in my research and in my opinion, I wouldn't say there's very strong or heavy evidence on either side saying it's better for the environment or from health. But I kind of have seen that we probably can't sustain a population of 10 billion plus purely on organic foods because the amount of land we need, even if we looked at just plants.
The yields.
Because you can't just have 50% of all land agriculture forever. Like there needs, even if we were to shift to legumes and nuts and all these plant alternatives, there needs to be more room for forests, and there needs to be more room to rewild, like we were talking about before. Like, what's your opinion on the organic GMO whole debate, and if you have like a strong opinion on each, or either on the health aspect or the environmental?
Yeah, so I originally thought of course organic would be better for your health. It just makes sense, right? It was one of those things I was like, it just makes sense not having pesticides on my food. That makes sense. And I didn't realize really what it meant to be organic. There are so organic doesn't necessarily mean it's pesticide free. It means they use certain organic pesticides, and it doesn't mean it's. So we use obviously synthetic fertilizers for GMO and things like that, and they use natural fertilizers, which can be blood and bone, cow manure, things like that. So a lot of the manure from the factory farms then go and get used as manure, which is so then you're not really this is the thing, you just got to be really open minded. I like the idea of organic, right? Like it sounds great. We all like this natural. It's this naturalistic fallacy, right? We all want to be natural, and everything has to be natural. Unfortunately, we don't live in a natural world. We are so far from natural. I've got a tap over there where my water comes out of. I've got a fridge to keep my food cold. I just wash my clothes and I sleep in a bed. That's not a natural. If I really want to be natural, I go out and live in the bush, right? That's ultimate natural. So we don't live in a natural world, and we have to do the best we can. With science, science has led the reason we fly planes. It's because of science. The reason we have mobile phones is because of science. The reason we can save lives in the medical world is because of science. So science is a pretty amazing thing. It doesn't have all the answers, but it's the best we got. And so GMOs aren't inherently bad, and there is no evidence to suggest that these are causing all sorts of cancers and things like that. And people think, I've got to be 100% organic. I eat some organic food. I eat some organic food for sure. But most of the other stuff I eat is non-organic, and I'm not sitting there going, oh my God, that's going to be bad for me. It's not bad for you. The evidence shows it's not bad for us. Is it bad for the environment? There are some pretty cool farms. I think it's called, one of my mates showed me the other day, it's like syntropic.
Is that the ones that are like pillars that go up, and they kind of produce their own greenhouse kind of conditions?
It's pretty cool stuff.
And creating a little world, playing with God.
Yeah, it's like a little microbiome, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I would leave that to the scientists to work that out. There are people, very, very clever people, who are looking into those food solutions, but we need food security. And I don't think it's an argument that's worth having with people, organic versus GMO, like whatever, as long as people are just eating predominantly plants. That's the big thing. And then we can work out the smaller things, because right now we've got a huge problem. Our planet is just choking, and we are killing it. We are ruining our children's future, my kids' future. It breaks my heart. And the best message that you can tell anyone is just to eat more plants. And it doesn't matter even if the worst environmental, the environmentally worst plant is way better than the environmentally best source of meat. So it's very, the answer, I always try and make things very simple. It's just, we just need to eat more plants.
Yeah,
as many as you
for
can.
sure. I absolutely agree. I think the argument can take place once, maybe in a situation where there's someone who's plant-based, i.e. me, talking with another person that's plant-based. I think then there's a spot for that conversation to happen. But I think what you're talking about is very important, in which get the biggest bang for buck done.
Yeah.
Because you can
start to work out the intricacies. And
that's it. You can split hairs about the organic, and there's sides on both in terms of every aspect. But I think if you're still eating meat, you need to ditch that conversation and look somewhere else. Do some reflecting on why you're trying to hide from the facts that kind of sit in front of you. And if you're eating 10% meat, is what it is. But obviously,
it's better than not.
Yeah.
Than not even trying. And that's my thing is people is to. My big message is for people to stop thinking veganism is stupid and it's ridiculous, and that you all these foggy brained, sunken eyed, skinny people. It's actually got a lot of science behind it, and it actually takes a lot of energy to change your belief systems. We know that, and it takes a really intelligent person to be able to question their biases, question their morals, question everything they've grown up to believe, and go, hey, maybe I was wrong. And that's the most important thing, because in science, that's what we do all the time. We say there is a chance that we're wrong. And if someone can prove that I'm wrong, then I'm going to say, you know what, we were wrong. I'll openly admit it, and I'll then change my belief system to fit that bit of data. It's about applying the same rules of logic and reasoning to each bit of data you're presented. You can't just pick and choose what logic you want to apply in certain scenarios. You have to just be consistent. And for ethics, we all say we're animal lovers, yet we are paying someone to torture and mutilate animals. For environment, we all say we love the environment, yet everything on our plate is absolutely destroying our planet. So we've got to be consistent. We've got to be logically consistent, and we're not as a society right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
It's so funny as you were saying that. I'm thinking, it's to stand up for your beliefs, to actually really question yourself. It does take a lot of courage. And I'm thinking, the first thing came to my head, and I'm like, oh no, Tom, don't say that. I'm like, yeah, it takes a lot of balls. And I'm like, damn it, you did it.
We talked about this.
Yeah, we were talking before we recorded how we're trying to remove the euphemisms of, no, females have courage too. So I'm like, okay, no, we don't have, it doesn't take balls, it takes guts. It takes guts, it takes courage.
It takes courage is a good one. So, we're saying that testicles don't just have courage, ovaries have courage too.
That's right. that's the slogan. Ovaries have courage too.
They certainly do. It's the unconscious bias, right? So, yeah.
What do you think, obviously veganism, you've got this moral compass, this ethical, and probably the way that, just looking at large, the world's probably leaning in this direction. I might only think that, looking at confirmation bias, because that's my world. That's the people I surround myself with. I don't exclusively, of course, hang out with only vegans. I don't, that might not be something that comes up at all. But when you're kind of in the world of plant-based and going to these restaurants and meeting new people, I tend to find, and that just could be, like when you want to buy a Tesla, you just see Teslas everywhere or whatever it is. And I seem to be finding a lot more people tend to be plant-based, plant predominant, ordering plant-based dishes even if they're not. Like finding people, I'm not vegan, but I tried this amazing vegan place. That's something that wouldn't have ever been mentioned maybe even 10 years ago. Was there vegan restaurants 10 years ago? Not that many either. Yeah. In your opinion, where do you think veganism is going, or maybe in like the short term, medium and long term, what are the changes that you think you'll be seeing in society, either with the way we maybe conduct ourselves, the way we maybe conduct studies, some science that you want to see done, or maybe the conversations that we're having as well?
Yeah. I think it's definitely heading in the right direction. Will it head into the direction that we need it to, to do the right thing by the planet? I don't know. I always think it's the pessimist in me sometimes that I always think about the patient that I see who's a smoker, who I tell time and time again to stop smoking. And then when they come to the anaesthetic clinic prior to getting their part of their lung cut out because they've got lung cancer, I say, do you smoke? And they say, well, I stopped. When did you stop? Oh, when I found out I had cancer. So I feel like I'd really like it if that wasn't going to be the mentality for our world. I feel like our world, we're giving it cancer. And I just hope we can realise that before it's too late. Like there are people who stop smoking well before they get cancer, and I take my hat off to those people because that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strong will. So I think I think we can do it. Will we do it? Well, that's another question. I don't know, but I am very optimistic. I always think the glass is half full. I always think that, and I see some of my mates now who just thought it was ridiculous when I first went vegan or first went vegetarian, and they all said it was because I did it because of my wife, right? So that was all. Everyone said that to start with, and now a lot of them are virtually 90% plant based, and that's really promising, And I don't have many friends that are fully vegan. Most of my friends aren't. So at the end of the day, most of them though now are very heavily in favour of it and don't think it's stupid. And they follow my page, and I can say whatever I want, and they support it. They're obviously keeping me in check all the time too. Saying I don't want to make false claims, but it is great to see that support. So I think the world's heading in the right direction, and I hope it gets there. I really do.
I hope so too.
Same.
I mean, kind of has to be. I think the IPCC gave us another 6 years or something, so we've got a lot to do.
This clock is ticking.
Out of curiosity, and this is totally on a tangent.
Hit me, yeah.
You used to have, so your Instagram handle, of course, I'll leave everything linked in the bio for people to find you. And I think everyone should go, if you're not already, to follow Andrew on Instagram. He does post a lot of amazing science, and he does in a lot of very satisfying ways, call out a lot of trolls. So he is not all heroes wear capes. That's what Andrew is. You recently got rid of the word, was it plant-based?
Yeah.
You've changed it.
Yeah.
Why was that?
So yeah, good question. I'll always be vegan myself. But when I first did physiotherapy, that was my first degree. Actually, I started doing psychology. God, I didn't like that. I love psychology now, by the way, too. I don't know why. I should have kept going with it.
Full circle.
I did physio, and I just thought health was all about exercise. And I was like, I don't really care what I eat, mate. I used to eat chicken, cheese, and barbecue sauce sandwiches at lunch. We'd have hot dogs, with cheese on them for lunch. I remember even this packet pastas, the continental Alfredos.
Yeah.
Things like that, mate, just to get you through uni, right? Like the cheap food. And I was like, it doesn't matter. Like I'm exercising. I'm at the gym 3 or 4 times a week. I'm running. I'm doing all these sorts of things. I thought it was all about exercise. And then when I went and worked over in Wales, and I worked as physio over there, and I lived with 2 dietitians, and they just couldn't believe my diet. They were like, what are you eating? Like, this is horrendous. It's so bad for your health. And I was like, I just remember these 2-pound Tesco pizzas, like with salami on them, right? Oh, that's what I would eat. Like that.
How old are you?
I was, 24, 25 at this stage. Right. I was 27 when I went to med school. And I just didn't even think about diet. I had no idea. And then I started to think, maybe it is a little bit about diet. And then when I met my wife at med school, she really challenged a lot of my beliefs. And here I am today. But I started looking, I was like, holy crap, look at all this stuff. It's diet as well. So it's diet and exercise. And I think now, the older I get, the more I realise that there is just so many other aspects to health that are so important. And we touched on one earlier, sleep. Sleep is, the science behind sleep is just phenomenal. And you've read Matthew Walker's book, and it's just, it blows me away how much data there is on sleep and how the benefits of it. and it almost blows me away more than the science on diet. And the other things that I really think about is avoidance of alcohol. So the big ingredients, and I'll say the ways to fertilize health, right? So the big ingredients is going to be, first of all, is exercise, definitely. So we need to move 30 minutes a day. And we know that over-exercising can be bad. So if you know, these Ironmen, these ultra-endurance athletes, they tend to have trouble. Yeah, that's not us. No. But, 30 minutes a day is certainly acceptable. And then diet, so eating in my professional opinion, and I think with a lot of the scientific consensus, most people's opinion, would say that eating a very plant-predominant diet is one of the healthiest. So 80 to 90% plant-based. I would say 90% plant-based. And the other thing was sleep. We said avoidance of alcohol and smoking and other drugs. The other two areas that I look at, so stress and anxiety. So that was a big thing for me, was dealing with my own anxieties. I think we all are on a spectrum, and we've all got a certain level of worry, and it's our ego and that little voice inside our brain that makes us think and overthink things. And this is what I meant earlier about with Harry. He's my young guy. I can see him thinking a lot, and I used to think a lot until I met my wife, and so I dealt with that a lot. I hit it head on, and through meditation and things like that. So meditation and stress relief is huge for me too, and the data on that is quite amazing to read as well. And the final thing is family connections. And I think that's like the blue zones, right? So a lot of this is from the blue zones. I'm not sure about sleep in the blue zones. I'm not sure they went into that as well. But family connections, I just can't tell you how important that is for me to be able to connect with my wife. Honestly, I just adore her. I think I'm just, even we've been married 6 years now, and I'm just, every day I'm just even more and more in love with her and my kids now. It's just that connection I have with them. It's amazing. When I first was a dad, I didn't really see it as much as I should have. I was kind of too bogged down in my studying and things like that. But now that I'm not studying as much, I'm just like, I just love being a dad. And I think that's what life's about. So the longest living study on happiness from Harvard University showed that the number one predictive factor of being happy is having a happy, healthy relationship with your family, with your spouse, with your mum and dad, or whatever that may be, and your kids. So I think they're the big things for health for me. So that's why I changed my name, because I wanted to start posting about some other things that I'd learned. So yeah.
I love that. I love how, you've really attested, and I always say this a lot, because Instagram is one of those platforms, and I'm sorry to single out Instagram. All social media are platforms in which it's so easy to kind of construct this facade where you're not yourself, and because you don't have to be, but it kind of helps you portray your values in another way, and that's awesome. And I love all the ways you touched on, and I laughed and I looked at Shana when you said ultra events and Ironmans. I'm standing, I looked at your stairs coming up. I'm like, I'm limping. 2 days ago I ran a marathon.
Oh, did you? Right.
My first marathon, 4 hours, 44 minutes. And
awesome, mate.
I'm
good job.
limping today. My right ankle's swollen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my body's in pain. I love it. And it's incredible, the sadistic love I have for pain.
Yeah, it's the
but I'm sitting here, I'm sitting on the couch in pain, looking at Sean, and I'm like, I don't think this is healthy. Because you think, I used to think marathons are like the pinnacle. Like, people who can run marathons are just a spitting image of health. Yeah. And as I get older and I look at other people and I hear lots of stories, like we watched a little doco of Mary Kane and how she got treated with Nike, abusing her body, and how people, in these running communities, ultra events, sometimes have this incredibly perplexed relationship with their bodies and the image that they want to portray, and the skinniness, and you just look at them like, that's so unhealthy. And I'm clearly not too skinny, but at all. But when you look at what we portray as health, I love your point and perspective on really simplifying things. Like, you don't have to run a marathon.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling you, you used to run 36-minute 10Ks. Like, that is stupid quick. Yeah, that's like 4-minute averages. Like, that's so fast. you don't need to achieve that level of athleticism. Like when I watch my mate do the Cairns Ironman, I'm thinking 10 hours of straight pain through, what is it, like 260 Ks or whatever it ends up being at the end. I'm like, you don't need to go through that hell to achieve this level of health. Like 30 minutes, I'd probably say maybe 30 minutes to an hour of exercise. Moderate intensity. Go for a brisk walk. You can probably knock them all out at once. Go for a brisk walk with your loved one, holding a carrot, and like that's 3 in 1.
Yeah.
And I think this approach to simplicity is how we can make that bridge over to that utopic or semi-utopic plant-based world, because nutrition, like we've been talking about this whole episode, is super complex.
Yeah.
So is the environment, and so is ethics. Philosophy is such a deep conversation.
It's huge.
You know, it can go forever.
Yep.
But when you simplify how do you simplify it? And your fertilization of simplification is just such a beautiful, not long, the opposite of long-winded, just a nice, easy little pillar to follow. And I love that you like meditating with your kids like that. That's still blowing my mind. Yeah. Do you have, besides those, I mean, coming to the end of the episode, do you have any words of wisdom besides all of which you've bestowed upon us today that you'd love to leave us with? It could be relating to what we talked about today, or it could be something completely different.
Oh God, that's a hard question. I think I guess it depends on who I'm talking to. I guess to people who are vegan who want to make a difference, and you know, I used to think that I was going to go out and I was going to change the world. I was going to just show everyone, look, this is what I've seen. Have a look at it. Like, you got to look at it. It just drives people further away. You've just got to do it in a very compassionate manner, and just be patient and just lead by example. I think that's the point. The other thing is, like you said, don't overcomplicate things. It's such a confusing world. It is such a complicated world. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So, do you know Maslow was so Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have our physiological needs, so we need to be able to eat, sleep, whatever, all those things. Next one is our safety needs, in no particular order, but we need to be safe, and to have safety, we're going to need to feel like we're in control. And a lot of us right now are feeling a very distinct lack of control, and we're scared, and there's lots going on with the pandemic, and when there's just so much information, it's like, how do you have control over this? And your brain's going a million miles an hour. You just have to wind it back to those key principles and be like, I just need to eat more plants. I just need to sleep properly. I need to stop drinking. I need to not smoke. I need to make time for my family. I need to make time for meditation, and I need to exercise 30 minutes a day. And it's just, that's the simple life. And that's how I don't try and overanalyze anything. I don't try and sit there and think, you know, if I eat this one tiny goji berry from the Himalayas and it's got some crazy antioxidant in it that's going to make me have this wonderful, I don't know, whatever. Like, get my point. It's just like, I just don't look at it like that. Eat as much plants as you can, eat as much variety as you can. The planet it's better for the planet, it's better for the animals, and it's better for you. And that's my message to people.
I love that.
Yeah.
What I love about conversations like these is there's definitely room for round 2. I had a page full of notes that I think I might have looked at once just to remember how, is it Saldino or Saladino? That's the only part I looked at this page. I'm like, it's great. And there's so much knowledge. So I always love to finish my episodes with a thank you, and I love the fact that we can do it face to face.
Yeah, it's been great. Hey,
it's been amazing. I love episodes that I can do face to face. One, I know it's better quality for the audience, so I appreciate that. But also I think the conversation flows a lot better, and I want to thank you personally as well for the absolute unbiased, amazing science and resource that you put up using your social media, because at the end of the day, you don't need to. Yeah. You have a family, you have your kids, you have your wife who you clearly love so much. And the fact that you put time out of your day, your week, your month, and your year to post this information that literally helps other people. Like, I browse the comments every now and again just to see what's happening, and people are always like, thank you for doing this, or they're asking for other advice. And that's literally time out of your day that you've spent years and years studying and practicing and learning and reading, and you're still always upskilling only to help other people. And I think that level of altruism is incredibly rare, and is something that I hope the people on the Instagrams don't take for granted, because I think it's something that will of course serve you many years to come. And I do appreciate it a lot. And of course, someone who is a guy, man who's masculine man who's not afraid to say, the ethics, the way that we treat animals is horrific. Because I know it's less and less common now, but I know, like, as you would know with your mates, it's, you got to be a man's man, and that's not what veganism is really known for. So it takes a lot of courage and guts on your end to come out and speak about that and say, nah, we need to change. I don't care if I'm a man's man, I'm a girl's man, whatever, but this, you ditch those stereotypes and ideologies that don't serve you to speak out for what you believe in. So I thank you for all of that, and of course for coming on and having this amazing conversation on the Plant Paradigm Pod.
Mate, can I just say, it was you're very, very welcome. I'm blown away by that. And yeah, it's times where I've thought about completely ditching my Instagram because I know that it's time's very precious with family. So I really, really appreciate your words, more than you know. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Hi there. Welcome to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening the whole way through. It was a longer conversation than usual, so I appreciate you lasting the whole way. And if you have, make sure to share this episode with someone who you think will bring a lot of value into their lives, because we did touch on a lot of topics, and a lot of it I find will actually benefit even vegans. A lot of vegans don't know about the antibiotic resistance that is threatening us, and especially in the way of science. Like, we kind of know, but not really in a way that can be, I guess, talked about in a really confident manner with the right terminologies. And thank you once again to Andrew for sitting down and having this powerful conversation. I really had a great time chatting to him, and I'm sure this isn't the only time we'll have him on the show. If you're on YouTube, remember to click subscribe. If you're listening on Apple or iTunes, remember to review. And for everyone else, just click that follow button to make sure that you get notified when all the new episodes come out. But that is all from me today. Stay happy, eat plants. Peace.